Hey everyone, it's Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And this guest is, well, so insightful and so powerful, he's only the second guest in the history of the Massimo Show to be repeat. So it's the one and only Allen Buchanan. Hey guys, it's Rod Santomassimo, and I got great news for you. I have taken the lessons of the last 30 years, all the conferences I went to, and I packaged the best of the best aspects and even plussed it in a conference we're calling MassimoCon. It is going to share with you and give you direct access to 9, 7, and 8-figure producers, some amazing keynote speakers, and so much more. Oh, it's a live 2-day event in Dallas on November 2nd and 3rd. You've got to be there if you're dedicated to making sure you get in position to dominate CRE in 2023. MassimoCon is on, baby. You've got to get there. Check our social posts, check our website for your information. And yes, get there because only a limited number of seats left. Hope to see you at MassimoCon. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Allen, welcome to the Massimo Show.
Thank you, Rod, and I hope it's a repeat because I got something right before and not didn't get something wrong, right?
Allen, it's because you're famous. You're the Tuesday traffic tip guy. You're the guy in LA and Southern California, Orange County that everyone knows about. And you're the guy that people go, what does that guy do that's so freaking good? And also, let's face it, you're not a spring chicken, neither am I. Yet you found your niche, you found your way to get your message out. So there's so many reasons we need you on the Massimo Show. Is that fair?
I love it.
So Allen, look, for those listeners who either forgot, they shouldn't have, because they didn't apply what we talked about last time. Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about you, and let's talk about why commercial real estate. To me, go back as far as, heck, high school. Who's Allen Buchanan, and what was he doing in high school?
Allen Buchanan was a nerd in high school. That's the best way to sum it up. I went to high school in the mid-'70s, so I was complete with my shag haircut, my big bell Levi's, my stack heels. I looked like a member of the Bee Gees. But yeah, I was a nerd. I figured out very early on that I was too skinny and small to play football. I was way too slow to run track. I was afraid of a baseball, and so I picked up golf, and golf was my passion. And that sounds cool, but you got to remember the 1970s, golf was not cool at all. Golf was the sport that the nerds played, and as a result, I got 0 women during my high school years. But yeah, I grew up in a family-owned and operated business. My parents divorced at an early age, which I look back, and that really enabled me to, I didn't know it at the time, of course, but that enabled me to become the intermediary and negotiator that I am, because I found myself very often between my parents and trying to negotiate, whether it was visitation or you name it. I found myself in that sort of intermediate position. I also found myself in that intermediate position between my younger brother and sister and my parents. Little did I know that was great preparation for a career in commercial real estate.
Why commercial real estate? What was the initial opportunity, challenge, door that you said, hey, what's this commercial real estate thing? And was that your first profession?
Thanks for that question. And it was not my first profession. As I mentioned, I grew up in a family-owned and operated business, and we bottled and distributed a product called Dr. Pepper, which everyone knows what Dr. Pepper is today. But
it's made a comeback, man. It's made a comeback.
In 1930, when my grandfather founded the company, no one in Texarkana, Arkansas, Texas knew what Dr. Pepper was. So it was quite a sale. Everyone knew Coke, everyone knew Pepsi, but no one knew Dr. Pepper. So my career trajectory was I was going to be the third generation to take over the family business. and worked in the family business growing up, delivered soft drinks, delivered premix to restaurants and what have you. And so got a real good understanding of the business. Went off to the University of Arkansas and studied economics, about to graduate, I should say. My dad said, "Hey, you don't know squat." And that's not what he said. He said, it began with an S, but it wasn't squat. He says, "You don't know squat. I want you to go hire on with one of the big consumer goods companies, learn how they do things, spend 4 or 5 years doing that. Then I might hire you." So I went to work for Procter & Gamble Distributing Company. Shortly thereafter, went to work for the E&J Gallo Company, really honing my skills in the consumer goods world. And sort of silly me, I didn't realize that as your responsibility in the consumer goods business grew, so did your geography. And so I found myself on an airplane 3 days, 4 days a week, a young family, that wasn't working. So I went in on a Saturday and I resigned my, at the time, $40,000 a year corporate job, including all the perks, the benefits, the company car, handed my company keys. The guy said, "What are you going to do for a living?" I said, "I have no idea, but I'm not doing this anymore." So I completely quit cold turkey and just went on a journey for the next 30 days to try to figure out, okay, what's the ideal career path for a guy with a young family that doesn't want a boss, that doesn't want a cap on income, that wants to stay geographically focused. And I was very fortunate to find commercial real estate through a sort of an old-fashioned networking, if you will. I was introduced to a gentleman that actually was a contact of my father's. He was president of Coca-Cola Los Angeles. And Jack agreed to meet with me. I went and sat with him. And he said, "Boy, based on your skill set, sure sounds like a career in commercial real estate might be something you ought to consider." And I said, "Well, I don't even know what that is." And he said, "Well, let me give you an idea." He says, "You're sitting in an office suite. That's commercial real estate." He says, "The buildings your father operated this business in Texarkana, that's commercial real estate." So a commercial real estate broker is someone that works with owners and occupants of these sorts of assets. And I said, "Man, that sounds incredibly interesting. How would I go about finding out?" He goes, "Go to the Yellow Pages," because you couldn't go and Google anything at the time. We had the Yellow Pages. Go to the Yellow Pages, figure out the top 3 or 4 companies that do that, and ask them if you can come in and interview. And that's what I did. I just really did it the old-fashioned way.
Okay, so let's advance. So how long until you got to Lee and Associates?
Fortunately, they were my first stop.
Oh my goodness! How long have you been at Lee and Associates?
38 years last month.
That is incredible. When I wrote my first book, Brokers Who Dominate, I wrote about this guy named Coley Derringer, who I just happened to play college lacrosse with, but he's a Transwestern. And like you, 35 years later, he is still in the same phone number, same office, kicking ass in industrial real estate like you, right, on the East Coast, not the West Coast. So yeah, longevity it does exist in a very transitional industry, because most brokers don't stay with one firm, for more than 10 years, let alone 38 years. So congratulations. Okay. So Al, let me ask you a question. You do this for 38 years and you have become this top producing industrial focused advisor in Southern California, one of the most competitive markets in the world. Give me your top 3, if I may, levers of success. Give me your first one. Doesn't in order. Give me one. Let's talk about that.
I really believe you have to be client focused first and foremost.
What does it mean by client focused? Everyone says it, but what does it really mean?
It means you got to put the client ahead of your own self-interest. And many times, new folks in the business, that means you've got to put your client ahead of that fee. If you're not doing everything in your power to do what's right for that client and understanding what's right for that client, and you're putting your own interests ahead of that, you're not going to last very long in our business, in my opinion. So that would be my foremost pillar, is you have to be client-centric first and foremost. And you just absolutely positively cannot vary from that. Lots of people try to take shortcuts. Lots of people try to have the commission get in the way of the deal, or the client interest rather. You just can't do it, in my opinion. Just flat cannot do that. So that's sacrosanct in my book.
So are there examples, no client names, but can you reflect on a client that you do for 38 years, that you've worked with for a significant number of years?
Sure. The first one that comes to mind was, let's call it my first sizable transaction, and bumped into this gentleman by knocking on doors, and he said that he wanted to buy a 30,000 square foot building. And a 30,000 square foot building in 1984, 1985 was probably $1.5 million, $2 million deal, which was a mammoth transaction at the time. When I started, if you could make six figures in commercial real estate, you were an absolute hitter. Now people make six figures in one transaction, but back then that was a pretty good annual take. So it became very apparent to me after talking to this gentleman that he was on such a growth trajectory that there was going to be no way he could live in 30,000 square feet more than a year or two. And so I had a very tough conversation with him. And I said, look, you want to buy a building. I'd love to sell you a building, but I'm afraid if I do that, I'm going to do you a grave disservice, because you're going to call me back in 2 years and you're going to say, hey, this building you sold me, I've now outgrown and I need to move. And I said, the good news is if we're in an upticking market, you might be able to lease the building, sell the building, but we don't want to have a liquidity event 2 years from now. Doesn't it make more sense to lease? Let's do a 3-year lease. Let's keep an eye on the market. I believe that in that period of time, you're going to be much more stable in your growth and be able to more adequately predict the right size for you going forward. And he said, wow, incredible. Never even thought about it that way, but you absolutely are right, because I could use the operating capital to hire employees and buy machinery and do all the things that you do with operating capital. So we did a 3-year lease. 2 years later, I get a call and he says, hey, I think I now need 50,000 feet. So had I sold him at 30, yeah, maybe he still calls, but I would have done him, once again, a grave disservice had I done that. So that's an example of putting the deal, putting your client ahead of the commission, ahead of the transaction. And I've had those conversations throughout my early years of my career. I had those conversations a lot. I would, in many cases, to my own demise in some instances, actually talk folks out of doing things as opposed to going with their vision and enabling that.
So if being client focused is a criteria of your success, and I've heard that often from top producers like yourself, is there another, even saying this is another principle that is a guiding principle for your success?
Cooperating brokers are your best ally and can be your best source of business. And you have to groom relationships with cooperating brokers, honestly, like their clients. That's been another sort of pillar of my years in the business.
Wow, I'm sure a lot of folks don't think of it that way at all. They think they're competitors versus cooperating. So, Allen, give us an example of a cooperating broker strategy you've utilized in the past.
Sure. I wanted to do some institutional real estate work back in the mid-90s when I saw a change happening in the marketplace. I saw a lot of institutional owners things were coming out of the early 90 recession, and they were saying, now's the time to dispose of these assets. So I wanted to put myself in a position to do that. And quite candidly, I got my head bashed in because my company, my skill set, my tenure in the business was not such that an institutional property owner was willing to hire us. So I made countless presentations to institutional property owners and groomed and worked and just, zero after zero after zero. And so one morning I get a call from a broker friend of mine, and he said, hey, I understand you've been really working hard trying to find these deals and sell these deals. And he said, I know that you have a group that you represent, a buyer, that just missed out on a transaction. And he said, would you be open to another deal that I have that's off market? And I said, absolutely. He says, can you meet in the morning at 8:30? I said, you bet I can. So we show up at his client's office, my client's there, and 45 minutes later, we inked a $12.5 million deal, which in 1996, a $12.5 million deal was like doing a $50 million deal today. It was a huge transaction. And I'll never forget, it was the Monday before Thanksgiving holiday. And at the same time, we strike this deal, we get a handshake. One of my client's lieutenants is actually typing up a purchase and sale agreement as we speak, prints it off, we sign the purchase and sale agreement. So we're underway, right? We're underway. And my client pulls me aside afterwards. He goes, by the way, you can't tell anyone about this deal. Anyone. And even your wife, you can't tell about this deal. And I said, why? He said, because we're going public. And this is going to be one of the pieces, this deal is going to be one of the pieces that enables us to go public. And he says, if the world gets wind of this, it's going to create my IPO, which is a much larger umbrella than this simple transaction. And once again, client focus. So I had to put a lid on the fact that at the end of the year, I was going to close a $12.5 million deal, which was going to take me from 13th in ranking in the company to probably number 2. And anyway, it was just the most amazing deal. It all came about as a result of a broker co-op and a relationship that I groomed with a broker that was watching what I was doing, bashing my head against the wall. And he said, hey, this guy really gets it. And here's a deal. And he's got the right buyer. And let's put the thing together. So there just is nothing like, and I'm not talking about brokers within your own office. I'm talking about brokers in the community. And I'm talking about brokers globally. Get to know them because, yeah, you can look at them as your competitors, but I choose to look at them as a complementary effort to what I do.
Wow. Great insight, Alan. Alan, I got to be transparent. You are a client of the Massimo Group. You're one of our Massimo members. You get coached by one of our fantastic certified Massimo coaches. Let me ask you, you were really successful before we met. You were. So what was it, someone who's a seasoned veteran like yourself, to make a decision that, maybe I should get coached? Because you really, we have an allotment of seasoned veterans, successful folks who we continue to coach. But many folks in your position say, I don't need it. I'm good. So why at that time how long have you been with us, Alan?
4 years.
4 years. Okay. So 5 years ago, then 4 years ago, what was it that you said, you know what? Maybe I should get coached. What was going on?
The interesting thing, you talked at the front end of the podcast about our second time together here. I don't know if you recall, but I originally talked to Massimo about getting coached a year and a half before I actually did.
Oh, I know.
And I chose not to proceed. And it wasn't anything that you all did or didn't do. It just was, in my mind, I wasn't ready. I'm the kind of person that when I set a goal, I'm going to die accomplishing it. I'm either going to accomplish it or I'm going to die trying. That's just the way I do things. So I just knew mentally I wasn't ready to put all the chips on the table. My wife read a book by an author. Her name is Jen Sincero, Sincero, Sincero. And she's written the whole Badass series. And my wife read a book, one of her first, called You Can Be a Badass. And she walked into my home office and she said, if I gave you permission to do anything that you needed to take your real estate business to the next level, what would it be? And I just, like that, said, I would hire the Massimo Group as a coach. And she goes, then I want you to do it. And she said, but there's one caveat. If you hire them, I want you to do everything they tell you to do because, it's an investment. And if you're not going to do everything, I said, I promise you I will do everything they suggest that I do. She goes, I know how you are. I don't want you to debate them. I don't want you to, try to have this conversation about why this is or why. She goes, just do what they tell you to do, which is hard for me.
Yeah.
But I did it. And Rod, the reason I did it, aside from giving myself permission to do it, but the reason I did it is because I always believed that I was a top producer. In my heart of hearts, I just never believed I was an elite producer. And at age 61 at the time, I knew that I probably had fewer than 10 years where I really want to crush it. But I knew that if I didn't achieve that elite status or once again, die trying, I was going to look back on my commercial real estate career with a little bit of remorse. So that was the catalyst. That's what happened for me to hire you.
So what has been the impact on let's go first with business. What's been the impact on your business?
So I was at a very good level when I joined. That level tripled in the first full year. Now I started mid 2018. End of 2018 was ramp up, but 2019, 2020, 2021, 3 years consistently north of 7-figure production. Good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. I'm on pace to triple that number this year. So if it's low 7 figures, I'm not quite to knackle land, but I'm knocking on the door.
is go to Nackaland. And folks, Nackaland is our top producer for all the years of Massimo, the gentleman Bob Nackaland in New York. He's going to Nackaland. Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, he's also my number 2, by the way.
So, Alan, we got this big event happening, the biggest ever in the history of Massimo. Internally, we're calling it Massimo Con, but externally, it's Dominate CRE in 2023, a 2-day live event. And you're going to be one of the 9, 7, and/or 8-figure producers, along with Nackel. What exactly are you going to share with our audience at Massimo Con Dominate CRE in 2023?
I'm going to share, like we just shared this morning, I'm going to share some anecdotal, because I'm an anecdotal listener. I like anecdotes. I like stories. And so I'm going to share some stories about success. I'm going to share some of the lessons that I learned early. I'm going to share some of the lessons that I've learned with Massimo Group through the coaching. Your attendees are going to come away with a map of, hey, if I do these 5 things, I'm going to increase my production. I'm going to increase my productivity, my success, infinitely. And so that'll be the focus of what I talk about. I'll hit on my strategic networking and my journey with strategic networking and how that came about. I think that's pretty impactful. I've not seen a lot of folks that do it well. I believe I do it well, but I've not seen a lot of folks that do it well. Obviously prospecting and how you prospect and to whom you prospect and what you say in meetings with prospects, because the reason you prospect is to get a meeting, and what you say in those meetings and how, the way in which you behave in those meetings can be tantamount to success going forward. So those will be the things that I'm going to focus and talk about.
Oh, Alan, I cannot wait to hear what you have to share. And I'm sure those listening to this podcast, you got to get yourself to Dallas, Texas on November 2nd and 3rd for our Massimo conference. Build a blueprint to dominate CRE in 2023. Alan, I can't thank you enough for not only your business and your trust, but more so for your very valuable time this morning. And I wish you the very best. And I can't wait to connect again soon. And certainly I can see you're going to be maybe the first 3-timer on the Massimo Show.
I love it. 3rd time's a charm.
3rd time's a charm. Okay, Alan, have a great day. Hey, everyone else that you're listening in, don't forget what Alan's dropped on you is wisdom. And wisdom is great, but you got to go now and implement what you have learned. And the way you do that is become a Massimo client and/or get yourself to Massimo Con and build a blueprint to dominate CRE in 2023. Until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. I want to thank you for listening to this version of the Massimo Show. And please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it, and more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show.